All right, it's the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin here with my guy Frank Tucker, and Happy New Year, everybody. We're representing for CanesCounty.com, of course, part of the Rivals Network, bringing you exclusive news regarding the Miami Hurricanes athletic programs. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel as well as our podcast on everywhere you get your podcast. And Frank, first, I do want to touch on a very solemn situation that kind of happened last night in the football community overall, which was Damar Hamlin last night. Made a routine tackle against T. Higgins in the Monday Night Football game. Buffalo Bills safety then collapsed after making the tackle. We heard from the reports through the television that he was getting CPR for 9 minutes. Reports are that he is still alive. He's in critical condition at the hospital. But just, for me, Frank, just kind of watching that, I mean, you and I mean, we've watched millions of hours of football throughout our lives. I have never seen a situation quite like that. And it kind of just put a lot of things in perspective for me, just that, anything can happen at any given time in a football game. And it wasn't a vicious hit by any stretch. It was just a routine tackle. I think that's what was more mind-boggling for me. The fact that it was just a regular football play and we were thinking that we possibly lost one of our members of the football family in Damar Hamlin. Your thoughts, Frank? I don't know if you saw it, but just your thoughts on kind of what happened in that game.
Yeah, I watched it, and we were texting about it in the group text for Canes County, and it was crazy just because it wasn't even a head injury. It was a chest injury turned into a cardiac arrest. You never want to see that happen to someone, especially someone that's 24 years old. And there was actually an interview that came out that everybody started to post about him talking about you never know when it's your time to go. So that's it. It just puts everything into perspective. It's just an eerie type thing to hear, eerie type thing to see. Unfortunately, it happens in this violent game, but I think it maybe puts things into perspective for the fans. Like there's a certain way we should go about talking to and reacting to these athletes, that are essentially putting their lives on the line every time they step on the football field. So as a former coach, a high school coach, this is something that kind of hit home for me. I've had kids that got knocked out on the field, but I've never had a situation where a kid ended up going in a cardiac arrest and was in critical condition. So, my prayers out to him and his family, and hopefully we get some good news today.
Yeah, the NFL ended up canceling or postponing the game. I'm assuming this game will be played either today or maybe tomorrow. I'm guessing it's probably going to be tomorrow night. So we're just kind of waiting on an announcement on that. Hopefully he's okay. Prayers to him and his family. So hopefully that turns out okay. So moving on to this week, we have the Under Armour All-America game and a couple of Hurricanes players in this game. We've got Robert Stafford, the athlete from Melbourne, is in this game, as well as Cormani McLean. A lot of controversy surrounding Cormani McLean, like forever. I mean, it seems like there's always been some kind of controversy, I guess, surrounding Cormani McLean from basically from the time that he decided to commit to the Hurricanes a couple of months ago. Of course, he did not sign on signing day. Was scheduled to sign. He did show up at the media day for the Under Armour game and declined to take any questions, especially regarding recruiting. And now we're hearing, from directly from his Twitter account that he has a shoulder injury. I heard from people on the ground that he was indeed dealing with a shoulder injury. It's up in the air if he's going to even be in the game. But just it's just there's just always news swirling around the 5-star cornerback that is committed to Miami. From what we hear, Dion did make a push on signing day. From what we hear that morning, he made a push for Cormani McClain, and but he still remains committed to Miami from what we're hearing. And it was just maybe some technical issues going on with his transcripts that had to be resolved. Hopefully, that is resolved for him to indeed sign on the next signing day. Just quickly, what do you think about this whole Cormani McClain saga as it continues?
It's a saga, that's for sure. You saw reports that his coaches didn't even know he wasn't going to sign that morning, right? So that's why for me it's a little sketchy on if it was a transcript issue or not, because his coaches would have known that there wasn't a grade issue or a transcript issue or something along those lines beforehand. There were coaches literally driving to the signing, getting phone calls from media personnel asking them why isn't Cormani signing, and they had no clue. They're like, this is supposed to be the ultimate signing of the day. This is supposed to be the last kid that signs his letter of intent. He's supposed to be the star of the show, and it didn't happen. Now we're hearing that he's going to be committing, or not committing, but announcing where he's signing, soon, which kind of makes it like that he already signed, right? Because the signing day period is over, the early signing period is over. Did he already choose where he wanted to go? Is this something that he's playing out for like a documentary? Is this something that he's playing out just to milk as much NIL as he can? There's been some issues with Cormani over this cycle, right? And I don't think we want to, pound on a kid too much, but suspension in the playoffs for not showing up, going to the Florida Classic between Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman, the signing day issues this week at the Under Armour All-American practices. He wasn't himself, right? So I just hope that the kid can get back to just playing football. I think that's the biggest thing that we want for Cormani, even if he doesn't go to Miami, right? Is that we want this kid to be able to just focus on playing football, because he seems a little all over the place right now. It seems like there's a lot of noise around him, and as an 18-year-old kid, it's going to be hard to handle that. So unfortunately, it happened the way that it did. I think he still signs with Miami. I think that there's too many factors going into it. I think it would obviously it's appealing to go play for Deion Sanders, arguably the greatest cornerback, defensive back in the history of this game. I just don't think it happens. I don't think he makes that flip. I think if Deion had already had a successful season, then maybe that would happen. But I'm very confident that he ends up at Miami. The relationship with Marcus Van Dyke is better than any coach, including Deion Sanders. I think that Van Dyke probably ends up on field next year. That's why he turned down the job at USF as well. I think all signs are pointing to Miami solidifying that top 5 class with Cormani McClain in the fold.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully he does indeed play in the game scheduled for today, 5 p.m. on ESPN. And a player that we will expect to play is Rueben Bain, the hometown sack master, Hurricane Bain, wherever you want to call him. He's dominating this week at the Under Armour practices, and he wants to come home with the MVP. He continues to play with a chip on his shoulder, despite being a guy that is a 4-time state champion and the winner of the Nat Moore Award, and just on and on with the accolades that this kid gets. But he is a 4-star, and I think he believes that he's a 5-star, and he's playing to prove that. He's playing to prove that he is indeed a 5-star guy. Ever since, I've been watching Rueben Bain for a long time, ever since he's been dominating as a young pup at Central. And it wasn't until the first game of the year against IMG that I said, "Yo, this guy needs to be a 5-star." I've been saying that ever since then. I was kind of solid at him being a 4-star, or okay with him being a 4-star. But ever since that game, I'm just like, okay, well, he's doing it against the best competition potentially in the nation. He was dominant in that game. They moved him around the line. He was a legitimate factor, and I don't think Central wins that game up in Bradenton if Rueben Bain doesn't play. So I think he should definitely get his 5th star. Definitely move up in his rating across all platforms here, just so he can get his due. And based on what we've seen from him in practice this week, I think he's well on his way to do so.
I'm sorry, broke up a little bit there, Marcus.
I said, based on what we've seen this week, I think he's well on his way to do so.
Oh, listen, the kid is a 5-star through and through. He's the most dominant high school football player I have ever seen with my own 2 eyes. Right, that includes the Ja'Cory Brooks of the world. That includes, the Hollandale kids, Tyler Huntley, who won Gatorade Player of the Year. Includes Sony Michel. That includes Duke Johnson. That includes Dalvin Cook, right, who also played at Miami Central. We could be talking about the greatest number 4 to ever come out of Miami Central, and there's been a number of them, right? This kid,
Definitely.
77 career high school sacks in 4 years. This kid is almost averaging 20 sacks a season over a 4-year stretch. State champion every single year, right? He's won the state player of the year in his classification the last 3 years running, right? He's been all state 3 years running, right? Done it against elite competition. Helped his team put out one of the greatest stretches, not just in Florida, but in the country, right? A 4-peat is something that is generational, right? And every notch on his resume, comparative to the other defensive ends that are 5-star kids, are leaps and bounds better, right? And you can talk semantics of, he's 6'2.5", 6'3", 270 pounds. What position is he going to play? That is beside the point, right? Certain intangibles, require recognition. And he has the ability to get to the quarterback, whether he's rushing from the 1, the 2-eye, the 2, the 0, the 3-eye, 3, 4-eye, 4, 5, 7, 9. Whatever you want him rushing the passer at, he's getting to the quarterback. And if you ask anybody in the Miami Central program or any coach that is game planned for him, they're going to say the same exact thing. On top of that, incredible off-the-field player, right? One of the best kids we've ever been around.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's even a discussion that he's, a borderline 5-star kid. I think we should be talking about him among the best players in the country. I think that there's been a lot of 5-stars, right? No knock on our evaluation process. No, and it can't be perfect, right? It can't be perfect. And part of it is based on projection. But these kids haven't lived up to the Rueben Bain billing. And I have said this since his sophomore year that I think he is arguably the best defensive end in the country. And I think he's proved it time and time again. And this is another week that he has.
Yeah, a couple of other things I want to kind of add to that point is that he has a variety of moves to get to the quarterback. He can do it with his quickness. He can do it with his power, which I think he kind of prefers to do. I think he kind of prefers to kind of bully someone with his just sheer power, getting low and just driving an offensive lineman back. But he can do it with his quickness as well. Outside moves, inside moves. It's just, you just see it all from Rueben Bain. And when you compare him to the other 5-star guys that are considered 5-stars or rated 5-star guys, like a Samuel Mpemba, who is a kid I love. I mean, that great kid as well. But I would take Rueben Bain over Samuel Mpemba. And if you even want to compare him to other 5-star players not on the defensive line, I think he makes a bigger impact on the game. Like, for example, a Hakeem Williams, who's considered a 5-star player, but I think Rueben Bain's impact on the game is bigger than Hakeem Williams' impact. So just kind of to reiterate the point that Rueben Bain should be a 5-star guy. He's definitely going to move up in ratings, from what I hear from our guys at Rivals. But we're still going to keep pounding the table for Rueben Bain to get that 5th star. Another one of the Miami Hurricanes signees that is in attendance for this UA All-America game is Robert Stafford. Now, from what I've seen from Robert Stafford, he is a solid athlete, and I think he will grow into a great athlete. I don't think he's quite there yet to kind of get on the field as a college cornerback as of yet, from what I've seen in practice. I think with him playing against top level competition, some of the best competition in the country, you kind of see where he can improve as a DB. Just with his balance and his hips and just getting his head around on time, and just really being more feisty at the point of attack or at the line of scrimmage. I see the potential in Robert Stafford, but I think he's got a ways to go to really be on the field and really make a significant impact for the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I haven't been at practice like you at the UA practices, but there's going to be an adjustment period, right? And I think everybody should know that. This is a former receiver turned defensive back his senior year. Has he played some DB? Absolutely. But he's been relying on sheer athleticism over the course of those 3 years that he was playing spot duty defensive back, compared it to his senior year where he really stepped in as a strictly corner, right? And he looked good this year, right? He looked fluid. He's got great feet, incredible length. He's 6 foot, 270 pounds. The ball skills are there from his background as a receiver. But there's going to be an adjustment. He played at Galley, a school in Melbourne that's a solid playoff team, not a state championship contender. He wasn't playing elite competition on a weekly basis. And it's going to be him coming to college football and probably having a red shirt and being one of those guys that, Coach Adai talks about needing that mango season, right? He's got to come in and kind of build it up, right? Become a defensive back and not just an athlete. That's why he's listed as an athlete right now, because there is no definitive position for Robert Stafford right now. He's got great size. The frame is really nice. He could end up being a safety for all we know. We don't know what his developmental path is really going to take. I'm excited for it. I think he's going to be a guy that's a 2-3 year impact guy at Miami, probably stays until redshirt junior, senior year. And I think he's, one of the steals of the class, because they were able to get a high potential player, right, while bringing in, if Cormani McLean comes, an impact cornerback in Cormani, an impact corner, in our opinion, in Damari Brown, and then bringing in 2 guys with high potential in Antoine Jackson and Robert Stafford. So I love the batch of corners that they got, and Robert Stafford is a huge part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will see exactly how they perform in the game. I expect Rueben Bain. He said he's getting two sacks.
At least two.
I think he's getting that, and I might even throw a forced fumble in there. I can see that happening. So we'll see how Hurricane Bain performs in the game. And we have another game coming up this week. It's the U.S. All-American game out there in Texas. And Miami signees will be in attendance for this one as well. Scheduled to be there is Samson Okunlola, the 5-star tackle, Ray Joseph, the speedster wide receiver, Mark Fletcher, 4-star running back, Jaden Wayne, the outstanding defensive end, and then also Malik Bryant, the outstanding linebacker out of right here in Orlando. Out of all these guys, Frank, which one do you think is going to make the most noise? Obviously, Bain made the most noise in practice this week at the UA All-American game. Which one of these guys do you think is going to generate that similar type of buzz?
I think Ray is going to really bring that buzz from the All-American Bowl. We always see receivers in all-star settings really make an impact, right? We saw Lamar Seymour, Pitt commit in the Dade versus Broward game. In the past, we saw Deontay Mullins put on a show in the Under Armour All-American game, right? We've seen Jeff Thomas, put on a show in the Under Armour All-American game. It just, if you're an explosive wide receiver in a game where you only really have a week to teach defensive backs, a zone coverage scheme, right? Or having man coverage against kids that they're not really familiar with or game plan for, the receiver has a little bit of an advantage. And I think that Ray Joseph as a slot receiver, which is what he will be playing in this game, with the chance to take jet sweeps, chance to take a slant, 50 yards, right? Just making one guy miss and then being gone, especially as a potential returner in this game as well. I think he's going to have a huge game, and I think he's going to light things up. And he's already kind of lit things up from his interview perspective at the All-American Bowl, for check-ins. He's already been talking about how Miami's going to be changing the culture, that they're coming. This 2023 class is the turning point. Just his natural energy is going to be, seen on a national stage. And I think that his play as a true slot receiver is going to be shining through as well.
Yeah, really excited to see Ray. I'm actually excited to see Mark Fletcher. I think Mark Fletcher in the game, particularly, maybe not in practice, may not generate a lot of buzz, but I think in the game is something where, or is a time where we will see Mark Fletcher make some big plays. I feel like he's going to break out and get a couple of big runs, break some tackles, and just kind of ooh and ah the crowd over there in Texas. So I'm excited to see him as well. Just what we do here at Kings County, obviously we cover the Miami Hurricanes. Obviously, Frank and I, we're really dialed into South Florida football. So I do want to make sure I shout out some of the South Florida guys in both of these games. Will Fowles is here in Orlando at the UA All-American game. He's out to prove that, he's out to prove, to be honest, I think he's out to prove to Miami that they messed up. Because from what I heard, he definitely wanted to be a Miami Hurricane. He definitely wanted to be part of the 2023 class. So he is looking to prove that he was a miss for Miami. And then Javen Simpkins, a running back I love out of Miami, Norland, had a couple injuries, had an accident, car accident this year. I mean, this kid's gone through a lot, and I hope he also has a good showing in the game, as well as Santana Fleming. Santana Fleming is also in this game as well. This is a player that had a breakout. I would want to say junior year. I think it was
sophomore year, Carroll City, yeah,
breakout year, and everybody was all over Santana Fleming, including all the biggest schools across the country. And then it kind of quieted down. His recruitment quieted down a lot last year. Maybe because of quarterback play at American Heritage that year. Which they had to kind of rotate Brandon Ennis there, not a natural quarterback. That could possibly have hurt his stock among other things. And then at Western, he had a solid bounce back year, was able to get a commit to or sign with Western Carolina, which is another one of those schools that are snatching up our South Florida kids. So shout out to Santana Fleming. Hopefully he does well as well. And then in this U.S. All-American, U.S. Army game, we've got Brandon Ennis checking in for that game as well. So any South Florida guys from these two games that you want to, kind of point out here?
Nah, we pretty much touched on him. Javen Simpkins is a kid that I think is going to do really well at the next level. I think that, two-time Georgia Tech commitment. unfortunately, some things happened with that staff that didn't, allow him to be part of that. Michigan State's been on him pretty heavy. Louisville's had some conversations. I think he's going to be a guy that goes to the next level with the adversity that he has faced and completely acclimate quickly to the college game just because of what he's gone through. We know he has the natural ability. He had a breakout sophomore year, right? He's been a guy that was kind of slept on coming into high school. He wasn't one of those big name backs like a Mark Fletcher, right, or a Bullet. He was a guy that came in, nobody knew about him, played JV at Carroll City as a freshman, and then has been a guy, when healthy, is one of the best backs in the state of Florida, not just South Florida. Time and time again, whether it's as a receiver, whether that's as a power back, whether that's a guy who can run finesse, he is an all-around game that I love, and another one of those kids that we absolutely adore outside of the game of football. So, I'm so glad to see that kid be able to get the recognition of being an All-American, and I think that somebody's going to get an absolute steal on the second signing day in February.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other things, just some headlines that you can read on canescounty.com and just jump on the message boards, Canes Talk, for exclusive information. Something I want to talk about, Frank, is something that was generating buzz this week is Sharif Denson, saying that the Florida defensive back really kind of said that NIL it has potential to break up the locker room. Those were some interesting things that he kind of said, and he said that Florida was more solid. That's why he kind of went with them, and he is I'm paraphrasing, but he was not as certain that the NIL deals that Miami promised will actually go through. So that was interesting. And then also Jaden Rashada is out here at the UA All-America game. From what I hear from my guys, he's not flashing. He's not really showing that that Miami missed out on a good one, let's just say, from my guys here at Rivals. And he said that, at the media day, that Florida was just a better fit for him, and it had nothing to do with NIL, despite all the speculation. So I just want to serve all that information on a plate to you, Frank. What are your thoughts on those comments from those two Gators?
Sharif Denson is an expressive individual. He has been pretty much his entire high school career. A very good cornerback, defensive back, versatile player. But listen, he's a confident kid, right? And I think he's more so riding for the team that just signed him. There are definitely issues with the Florida collective right now. There's been some public comments from the CEO of that collective that have put him in hot water. And there's been some issues with payments. There's been issues with them being able to ramp up their NIL numbers. So, I think he's more so just trying to protect the brand and kind of show that he's solid on his decision. I know Miami and him did have discussions NIL-wise. I'm sure that the numbers thrown out, he was probably shocked about, maybe because he just wasn't getting anywhere close to that with the Gators. So that might have been the issue, right? But, yeah. I think, I think he's a legacy kid as well for Florida or something along those lines. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that. I know Jaden Rashad also said that NIL was not a factor in his recruitment. 100% was. We know that. There's verifiable information out there on that. He's one of the kids who cashed in on NIL in the process, and there's no qualms about that, right? It's okay for that to happen. And then Rashad saying that Miami was not as good of a fit. I'm hearing rumors that, he did try to revisit the opportunity prior to signing day on returning to the class. And there was also discussions with him to go to Oregon before they were able to flip yet another 4-star quarterback to get into their class. I believe from Wisconsin or something along those lines, but one of the top quarterbacks in the 2023 class. So, I don't think necessarily he was as sold on his decision to go to Florida at the end as he was when he flipped from Miami. It's going to be interesting to see how he develops at the University of Florida, especially with them, substantially going after transfer portal quarterbacks, offering up pretty big numbers from what I'm hearing to them. And then also getting DJ Lagway, arguably the top quarterback in the 2024 class, right? So is Florida that sold on Jade Rashada, or was this just kind of a sword match between Miami and Florida where they were just trying to win out, on the few battles that they lost? So I think it's interesting, but I think kids are just kind of going to ride with the school that they signed with.
Yeah, agreed. And the recruiting is going to continue to ride, as well as the transfer portal is going to continue to ride into the sunset for the Miami Hurricanes, as far as getting more guys in. And just you wrote a couple of stories this week, Frank, in regards to potential 2024 kids that Miami could land. The transfer portal needs to pay dividends for Miami, especially at receiver and defensive tackle. Those are the two positions that they desperately need, and safety as well, because you only have one true safety on the board. What are you hearing, and who do you think Miami lands next?
I'm not hearing anything at safety right now. That's the unfortunate thing. There are not many options. Out of the top 50, there's one guy uncommitted or unsigned right now, and he's looking at Group of 5 and FCS schools. He's one of those guys who just kind of hung around the top 50 safeties in the country. Not a Miami type kid. Plus, he's out of Texas. Probably not going to happen. Probably ends up like a Houston or something. Receiver, unfortunately, Raymond Cottrell. Right, that was supposed to be the saving grace, the outside guy, the Georgia commit, the Georgia flip. Right, he was supposed to be another, signature signing for Mario Cristobal, beating out one of the national powers. Unfortunately, he flips and goes to Texas A&M. Super surprised, in my opinion, especially because he's Emory Williams, number 1 wide receiver over at Milton. But I still think it's the Dante Thornton race. There is a receiver out of Charlotte that they could look at. There's not a ton of options. Georgia went and grabbed two of the kids out of the portal. The one from Missouri. I liked him, the Lovett kid. I thought he would have been a good fit at Miami. Unfortunately, they secure him. They might have to pivot to the JUCO route, kind of like how they did with Colby Young, right? Yeah. But we'll see what happens, right? I think that they're okay with the receiver group right now because they added Robbie and Bobby. Colby Young's going to have another year to develop. Frank Ladson comes back. He could be a solid 4th or 5th option. You still have an abundance of talent at tight end, right? You bring in Riley Williams, right? You still have Elijah Arroyo coming back healthy. You got Skinner, who could play a role as an outside receiver with his frame and his athletic ability. So I think, they're not going to just add guys for the sake of adding guys. And then at defensive tackle, kind of broke it down a little bit. I think they would like to add one more guy. I think they love Ahmad Moten out of Cardinal Gibbons, redshirt freshman. Thomas Gore, huge addition, right? You lose Darrell Jackson, but you get Joshua Horton, who we think is one of the best defensive tackles in the country. And you've seen his rise into the top 15 defensive tackles as we've switched his position from strong side defensive end to interior. He was incredible this year, over 120 tackles for undefeated Langston Hughes, state champion. Understands what it takes to help build a program from 2-8 to undefeated. Mario Cristobal talked about that on early signing day. He's a guy that has to be a building block player. They have to add more players like Joshua Horton. So I think they're going to be okay at defensive tackle, especially because Jacob Lichtenstein comes back for his 17th season in college football. So he's going to provide some good depth there. But I think transfer portal wise, things are kind of quiet right now. Devon Sears, transfer, interior defensive lineman out of Texas Southern, is a player that they recently offered. You could watch for him. He was talking about making a decision over the next couple of days. It's just there's not a ton of options in the transfer portal. It's a little late in the game now. We saw such a ramp up at the beginning where everybody was kind of finding homes and jumping in the portal and kind of locking in. And there's been some tampering, right? Especially at the quarterback positions. And it seems like some of the big time transfers are finding homes as soon as they jump in the portal. So that's interesting. But 2020, you go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just think we're going to see some more transfer players available in the next couple of weeks. Once bowl season is completely done. How about those playoff games? I mean, those were outstanding, by the way. But once these bowl games are complete, you're going to see more guys jump in the transfer portal, and Miami will potentially be going after a lot of guys in the next coming weeks. So look out just for some more names to pop up. One of which that I've heard is Caden Pricecorn. He is a tight end out of Memphis, big guy, and he also has a little brother as well, Brady Pricecorn. So it could be another brother tandem to potentially come to Miami. That little brother is a 4-star tight end, and the older brother had about 700 yards last year for Memphis. So look out for a possible brother duo to maybe come to the U as well. Another name I have to throw out there is Nicholas Harbor. This guy is a freak athlete. You know, he could probably play 4 legit sports legitimately. He and track being one of them. He's interested in the medical field. Obviously, Miami has an amazing medical program. It just seems like it could be a good fit, and I wouldn't put Cristobal and this staff past anyone. And the key would be getting him on campus. Now, he hasn't committed to getting on campus as of yet. He's interested. Cristobal is in contact with him. He is really focused on track, and he's got a track meet coming up in a weekend. So it really kind of depends on his track schedule, whether or not he visits Miami. But if he does visit Miami, then I would be very, very close to forecasting Harbor to Miami because of everything that Miami brings for this kid. Checks off all the boxes for him when it comes to this guy wants to be a surgeon, like an orthopedic surgeon. And Miami's program, one of the best in the country. Their track program is a solid track program, has produced a lot of 2-sport football athletes in the past. And you also got Chris Johnson, who is already committed to being on the track team, one of the fastest in Florida. So he talked about, the potential players that he could be playing with. He's already talked to the staff as far as the track team. And he's also talked to the medical program guys or administrators or whoever, however you name those guys. But he's already talked to those guys as well. So he does his research. But I think the teams to really kind of look out here for in competition is Oregon, because they landed an official visit for him January 27th to the 29th, right before signing day. And we all know that's a critical visit before a kid signs. The other school, I think, is Maryland. I think he is interested in just staying home. He talked very passionately about a lot of players staying home. He's from the DC area. Maryland's starting to get a couple of guys to kind of stay home. So I think those two schools are probably the schools that may, outduel Miami if they're unable to get a visit. But if they get a visit, I think Cristobal finds a way. I think he finds a way to get this guy here. He plays a variety of different positions. He plays defensive end. He plays could play tight end, could play receiver. I mean, he's fast AF, so he's just a big guy. He would need a lot of work when it comes to running routes. But, Gaddis has shown that he excels in developing guys in that area. Look what he did with Colby Young. So So yeah, I think that is like a real possibility to monitor. We'll see if he is able to visit within the next, week or so.
Yeah, yeah. I know he said the track schedule is going to dictate. If Miami does get a visit, and I think he does play receiver if he comes here. I think with the amount of defensive ends that they've brought in and the amount of tight ends that they've been bringing in, I think he ends up being an outside receiver first. And if it doesn't work out, then you pivot. But I definitely think that's the route that they'd be taking.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Other than that, I don't really see a lot of options in recruiting, to be honest. That's one big fish to get, and I think that's my alarm to let me know that the press conference is about to happen for Miami basketball. Miami basketball still doing very well this season, and they'll be taking on Georgia Tech this week. But yeah, as far as back to recruiting, I think that is the kind of the only option right now, especially with Cotrell committing to A&M. We'll see, because let's be honest, we didn't see Inez Cooper coming last year out of nowhere, like right before signing day, and we didn't see Matthew McCoy as well, and we didn't really see Trevante Citizen as well until right, the week of signing day. So you kind of never know what's going to happen here. Recruiting is so fluid. I'm excited to see what Cristobal does.
Yeah, me as well. Me as well. And hey, it's on to 2024 in a lot of different ways. They've offered double-digit offensive linemen. We've talked about that on the website.
Yeah.
3 of them out of the state of Florida, which is interesting. Miami has kind of went away from recruiting the state of Florida offensive line, except for like a Tommy Kinsler, right? But it's good to see some homegrown talent get some love from the hometown school. And some of these kids are some of the top offensive linemen in the country. I mean, the kid that really intrigues me though is the Manesi TT kid, if I'm saying that right, out of California. 6'6", freak athlete. But the thing that interests me is the international background that he does have. Right, he's from Congo, right? France background. It's very similar to guys like Collins Ashampong, right? It's very similar to Samson Okunlola, and it's very similar to Francis Malago and Frankie Tinalau, right? Those are 2 schools. I mean, 2 kids. Those are a bunch of kids that, came to Miami because of the attraction of the success that international players have had here. And I think that group could be a big push for him to potentially end up in this class. And even with him as a 3-star prospect right now, you're seeing a number of Power 5 schools, some of the best schools in the country, start to offer and start to evaluate. So I think he's going to be a big-time riser, and I think that he's going to be a guy that fans need to watch out for as a potential commit.
Well, look out for that, just as we will look out for everything else here at CanesCounty.com. That's going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the website. You see it there. Use promo code Miami30 for the first 30 days for free. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel live from Canes County, as well as follow us on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, make sure you follow the Crib, South Florida, for all exclusive news.
Appreciate you.
All exclusive news regarding South Florida high school football. That's going to wrap it up for us.